happy hour time.
Woohoo!
Yay.
One of my favorites. I absolutely love happy hour, and I love getting together with my ProAdvisor buds.
Yay.
And so we have Linda here with us today. Yep, so very exciting. And then we also have LeanLaw that's going to be talking with us later on. So Jonathan and Gary are both here. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the slides and be able to show you all of the exciting stuff that we've got going on. So if I'm going to start that here, and you'll be able to see my...
I have it on my side.
Oh, you see it?
I can see it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So happy hour with LeanLaw today and the niche spotlight. You know, I think I'm thrilled that this is an area that we chose to do the first niche spotlight. It seems like it makes perfect sense because law firms are unique animals. And so I'm thrilled that Linda's here with us today because she's a ProAdvisor who is dealing with these law firms and specializes in that area. So she's going to be sharing some of her insight with us. And I'm going to hop over and introduce myself. Most of you know that I'm Liz Scott and from Accounting Lifeline. And so I'm like so many of you here, I've got a firm that is in Oklahoma and we focus on QuickBooks. And so anything QuickBooks setups and training and integrations. And so that's what led to Heather and I creating the Happy Hour with all of the integrations in the QuickBooks ecosystem, understanding which ones are the best, how they work, how they connect, and then training our clients is very important, and having them take ownership in those apps is very important. So after doing it several times and sharing that with my ProAdvisor friends, it just made sense to have the Happy Hour. Heather, as you can see, isn't here yet. She's going to be joining us. She is stuck in traffic, and I want to say that she is in Long Island, but I could be wrong. So she's traveling somewhere. Both of us this week are on the Intuit Road Tour. So this is the last week of all of the training that Intuit is putting on for ProAdvisors.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we'll be seeing her shortly. She'll hop in. So LeanLaw, yay! We're glad that you're here. And we're going to be showing some goodies and good stuff later. And then talking about the niche spotlight. So really just that conversation about law firms and what special things you need to know and terminology. And that's the important thing, right, Linda, about like whenever you start doing niches, that understanding your client's world and being able to talk it is the thing that helps them to be able to know that you get them.
Exactly. You got to learn the lingo, and that actually sets you apart so they know that you know what you're talking about, basically.
Yep. So that creates a level of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll go into raising our toast to LeanLaw. And then we're also going to be talking about coolest things this month that we did with an app. And I can't wait to show you the coolest thing. It's an app that I got for decluttering. And so I want to show that with you because I am the world's worst about one of the areas of my computer that stays really cluttered. So I won't tell too much just yet. So with niche accounting and going into a particular area, you know, that's one of the things that we've been hearing about for a while is that we've got all these different types of ProAdvisors, but whenever you're learning how to work with each of these industries, you've got to be able to learn the basics of those industries. And sometimes you have clients that will say, I'd love to show you. And they really, really want to walk you through their world so that way you can better understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, you know, I was a generalist for 20 years now. I've been in business 20 years. And, you know, the hardest part of going to be working towards a niche for me was letting go of being that person that's, you know, just letting go of that person that would take anything and really taking the time to really learn the industry. And there's moments of freaking out when you switch, when you make the decision and then start to market yourself to that, start to do the learning. I listen to legal podcasts to hear the pain points of my customers and just all the studying that goes along with it. And then there were days where I'd be like, well, actually, because I have a business partner, Matthew Fulton, and I'd be like, I'm done. I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. Because sometimes the drip of customers will slow down. And because now you're really focusing on one thing. And he would just say to me, stop it. You're not going to go down that road. You've worked so hard for this. Keep going. It's going to come to fruition. And, and I've partnered with LeanLaw to be able to, we've got the accounting pros. So they actually will give you some leads, which is really helpful. And I have to say, the first one I got on my own that came from all my hard work of doing the blog posts and showing that I know what I'm talking about was really, really satisfying. It was like, oh my God, this is my first like organic one that I grew myself from all the things I've been doing. And it was like, I wanted to have a party. It was so exciting. And then once it starts to happen more often and you get referrals and it just kind of leads down that road, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because it is really a journey. What was happening in my area is because I do a lot of integrations, I had people who were saying, hey, I'd like to do more e-commerce. And so there really wasn't a great solution for them. So I started doing a lot more research into that area. And at first it was like, no, I'm not touching inventory. And then I was like, okay, well, this is a thing. It's a necessary part of e-commerce. And so it probably took a good year of just stopping the inflow of new clients and saying, I've got to put my head down and I've got to learn all of the ins and outs of e-commerce. And even though I thought that even now, still I find new things that I go, wow, okay, I didn't know that. Because that e-commerce area is changing so rapidly.
It's really specialized too. So when I get a client that calls, this is the harder part too. If I get a client who calls me that's like e-commerce, I can say, here, you need to call Liz. I don't want to do e-commerce. Honestly, I don't want to do e-commerce. So that's where it works out well, but you have to start being able to do that. And as a generalist, you're like, take it all in. And now you have to sit back and say, no, it's not what I want to do. And once you get your head wrapped around that and you start to see that, now you can start to charge more. That's your no-brainer. And really, when you think about it, when you really think about, I think it was 2016 when I went to QuickBooks Connect and I first started hearing them talk about maybe you should niche, and I took some of those classes. It was that long ago. And then that's kind of where the process started. And then it's now led down the road, but it's taken a while to actually take the leap. It's scary.
It's like those, I think that's probably whenever I heard it too. And at first I fought it. I was like, no, I do integrations, so I'm going to do them all.
Yeah.
That was my specialization. But then it just became one of those things that the more that you learn, the more that you realize there is terminology. There's things that unveil themselves to you as you go along. There's this whole discovery process.
You want to become a deep expert, right? You want to really know the industry, and you can actually micro niche. So you could say, I'm only going to work with personal injury attorneys, or I'm going to only work with estate planning attorneys. So you can actually go down that path and fine tune it to that point, which is, when you think about it, you could really know the pain points for that particular industry, which will set you apart, right? Than over anybody else.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it's like you said, a couple of years ago, that seed was planted, and then it really, once you start down that path, you have to do I'm going to put some things on hold because, it's always a trade-off in our worlds. If you're going to do this, you don't have time for that. And so really being able to say, this is the direction I'm going to focus.
And it's important too, with the automation that's happening in our industry, where it's really starting to get automated. I think if you don't start to think about finding the perfect customer that you want to work with, and then going forward with that and really getting that detailed and knowing the industry, your job might get automated away. And so if you're really working with some of these simplest tasks, right? That's what automation is going to take care of. And it does it well. It does it even better than us actually manually entering an invoice or bill. So if you start to think about that, and then you get to stay on top of the new technology, which is why we all watch Happy Hour. We want to know what's out there. I want to know what's out there. There might be something good. I just heard about chatbots for lawyers the other day, Law Droid, I think it was called. I was like, wow, that's interesting. That would work really well with the workers' comp attorney that I work with. So you start to look at those things. There's a lot of things out there that if you don't stay on top of it, but I don't want to have to learn every app. I want to learn the ones specific to the legal industry. So it's important.
That is a really, really good point. So talking about technology changing so quickly right now, that's a great point to be able to say, not only do you want to be able to specialize in your industry, but then you've got all of these apps. And so learning them and then learning which ones you pick is part of the game, because all of this technology does help us with our jobs.
Mm-hmm. And we all love it. I love it. I mean, I don't want to be that. I keep saying, I don't want to be that old person that says, I don't want to learn that. I want to stay right where I don't want to be that person. I want to be the 100-year-old that's still out there going, I'm going for it.
I have to tell a funny story then. Okay. So in my house, I have 12-year-old boys that they're my twin sons. And I told them, I said, okay, you have to go write an essay. It was punishment yesterday. And so they're like, okay, fine. I said, go write a 4-page essay. They're 12. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but that's just what it was. And so they were like, Mom, do we have pencils anymore?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because we're all technology based. And so we had to search the house for pencils.
Think about the last time you had to buy paper in your office.
Right? Yeah. Every once in a while, I still do print a few statements, but but for the most part, no. So I agree with you. Okay, so let's talk more about law firms and what are some of the challenges that they face specifically.
Oh, yes. That is one of the big ones. That's the big one. I mean, learning how to work with an IOLTA, learning how to work with the client retainers, specialized accounts. You know, I've been working in real estate industry for a long time because I own property. So like security deposits, you have to know how to specifically take care of a security deposit for the same thing. It's money that's not yours until you earn the revenue, and then you get to bill the client, and then you get to move the money out of the IOLTA and into the operating fund. But you have to specifically do it because it's compliant.
Wild things with those.
Oh yeah, you should see some of the things we see when we get the files. It's like, whoa, and we start to dig back. I actually work with Sarah Prevost, another one of the accounting pros, and we've partnered together, which has been a wonderful collaboration. And we've been working through, and I think she's the master at digging through. She's dug through some files that have gone back years that were on green ledger paper and deciphered what happened. But it's important because for compliance, you have to make sure that money's not yours until you've earned it, and then you can take care of it. But you got to keep that path and those accounts straight. The attorney can lose his license to practice.
And I don't think they do it intentionally. I truly think it's a matter of, this is what we see a lot of times in any industry. Our business owners do their job really, really well. That doesn't mean that they do accounting really well. And so being able to understand those two worlds and do them well, that's why they need somebody to partner with them to help them with being able to handle the accounting. Mm-hmm. They just don't know better.
They don't. And, Sarah and I have been doing rebuilds. So we're taking a desktop product that's legal, law specific, but it's desktop and it's very it's clunky, it crashes, and the people have a serious pain point with it. And we're taking that and implementing that. My firm's all QuickBooks Online. So we're taking that file and rebuilding it to put it into QuickBooks, adding LeanLaw to it. And it's been heaven for these people because they've been working in a product that's been not real intuitive, but we, again, have to build it back in because some of these accounts go far back if it's an estate attorney. But the fact that we've partnered so well with LeanLaw and they train on their side, and it's been a dream to be able to do this work with them.
It's funny because you started to smile whenever you were talking about it's a true dream. It is very rewarding to be able to see the progress and to where somebody looks at it and goes, okay, this makes sense. And you really did help me. And okay, I get it going forward.
Yeah. And, and working with these guys, they're so open. And I love working with certain apps. Sometimes I'll say, Matthew will ask me why do you like that app? And I'm like, the people behind the app are great. And it definitely is with Gary and Jonathan. It's been great. We'll come up with work with a client and they'll say, gee, I'd like this report. And they've got really great reporting, which I'm sure Jonathan will show soon.
Oh yeah.
And they'll actually put reports in for us, which is, Fred's probably going, no, don't tell people that, but yeah, it's been really wonderful. But we ask for things and they just help us. So it's been, they've assisted in the client's happy. And that's the most important thing, is that the client's happy, right?
I agree. And it's exactly like you said, that listening to the advisors, because we're the ones who are actually working with the individual clients. So, listening to us about what it is that they're looking for really helps everybody.
Truly.
Yeah.
Being able to make them.
I want to make one little comment about that.
Please do.
For the accolades. You know, we had a real epiphany in probably 2017 and really shifted our focus in recognizing that the ProAdvisor was a customer, and the ProAdvisor was so important to our process. And we actually shifted and stopped marketing to attorneys and shifted all of our outbound focus to the accounting community. And we did that because they were, first of all, more responsive and more interested in talking to us, but they brought credibility. And what we realized that if when we created good relationships with the accounting community, that blossomed into a much more productive relationship with the law firm. One goes with the other. You can't have it, even if they have inside accounting folks. Your job is not just put the tool in place, it's to develop the best practices in these law firms. And what's nice about law firms is it's all repeatable. For the most part, they do the same thing over and over and over, just with different clients. So the accounting community is really important, and we do listen, because every time we put a feature out, if it doesn't work for the accounting community, it's not going to work for the lawyer. And so that's a really critical piece to us that we recognize. And Linda and Sarah, she mentioned, have been very important in that role for us.
Yeah, that's a really big, bold statement to say, that you stopped marketing to law firms and started instead marketing, connecting with the ProAdvisor. I think that make sure that the right people are listening to the message. And it also says that you're investing in us.
Yeah. I mean, if the law firm is searching, we want to be found. So we're making sure our marketing efforts. But when it comes to like, hey, law firm, let's have a conversation. Unless they're buying, they're not interested in talking. And really, you got to talk to the accounting person anyways. I mean, it's the real truth. So by having these relationships, not only are we learning what the requirements are of the product from an accounting standpoint, but now we create these collaborations that we can go to the law firms to collectively and say, hey, let's make this transformation, because that's really what's happening. I mean, the thing you didn't mention about, you know, it's not just about the old tools that are in place, it's the old behaviors. I call it sort of this institutionalization of worst practices. The idea that, you know, this is just the way we do it. Right? We get that all the time. And there's this, typically the change in a law firm comes from the top, not from the bottom. So some senior partner says, hey, we need to make a change, and it's delegated to a team, and not everyone's always on board, and they're not always the best run organizations to think they're coaching and working with all the staff people. They're sort of like, just go. And so it falls on LeanLaw and the training standpoint and the ProAdvisors to coach and coax them into that transformation.
I agree. And Karen Schwartz is with us, and she's one of my favorite people. So I'm glad that you're here, Karen. Hi. And she brought up a really great point. And she said one of the things that's important is that the ProAdvisors, we're the ones who are working with those firms. And so the better that we understand it, the better that we can explain it and do the work.
Yeah. And truthfully, I'd much rather talk to a ProAdvisor in an onboarding than the client, although I'm happy to talk to the client. And many times you need both of our voices in the conversation. But the ProAdvisor leads and we follow. So our job is to support the ProAdvisor. Relative to the client, even if the client brings us in, we bring in ProAdvisors. I mean, we brought Linda and Sarah into that project. And I couldn't have done it without Linda and Sarah. Like, we wouldn't have won the client without them. I mean, we might have won them, but then they would have just horribly failed without a proper accounting person.
I agree with that. And that goes back to that thing that I was talking about before, is I don't think intentionally they want to do things wrong. I think they just don't know. They get their world, they don't get the other world. And so being able to understand both worlds, you've got to be able to understand QuickBooks. You've got to be able to understand that system. And then if you've got another integration, it's like, there's more and more things that happen, and the more that you have to learn, that sometimes you just get overwhelmed. And that's why it's important for these small businesses to network with ProAdvisors. And then it's important for the ProAdvisors to really specialize in a particular area, because they can learn all those details.
Yeah. And one of the things we're finding too is we're working with these law firms, and we've had just 2 in a row, where the older partner is starting to retire and the son is actually in the firm. So he's the 40-year-old that's getting involved. and he wants to automate everything. And we're putting them in QuickBooks Online Advanced. So the father still, like you just said, wants some of the old things, wants the invoice to still look a little bit like it used to, and he wants to maybe have some of the things like the matter number on the invoice. So we use custom fields because we got QuickBooks Online Advanced. We're able to customize the invoice, add those fields that they've been using for 20 years, 30 years or whatever. And it's been working really well for the law firm practices and a lot of the other features. So you get Fathom reporting. I mean, you also get a lot of reporting with LeanLaw, but you get Fathom too, which you can do the KPIs and start to analyze specific parts of the data. So it's a real win-win.
Yeah, it is a win-win. And you know, one of the other things that's on our list here is the cash flow. So being able to understand where all the money is, that back and forth system, that's critical. How profitable are they? So being able to see revenue by attorney, client, case, and matter. So I mean, that's huge. When we're talking about a law firm that has multiple lawyers, who made the money?
Right.
And what kind of cases were they working on? Being able to have that transparency so they can go and look at those reports. That's difficult to always be able to see in just QuickBooks alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's some workarounds to it. And so let's go ahead and talk about going over to QuickBooks, that yes, you can do some of these things. So I'm going to go over to QuickBooks and talk about you can do law firms in QuickBooks, but there are some challenges. And so being able to create those liability accounts and then reconciling them and then making sure that you've got your custom customer reports. And the same thing with the billable time and expenses. That's a biggie.
For sure. Well, this is one of the big pain points that LeanLaw just takes care of for you. It's wonderful. Oh, I think we got Heather.
That's our friend. Hey, Heather. We see you, but she's probably adjusting her mic. So we'll just carry on until she's ready to talk with us. But yeah, the billable time and expenses, boy, that's a big one that if it doesn't get billed, then it's sitting there and it's just a wasted opportunity. And being able to record all of those details, especially for a law firm, really matter.
Well, and even to add to it, you know, right now, some contingency firms will charge interest on expenses. So not only you have to capture the expense, you have to be able to report on the expense, and you have to be able to calculate interest and then communicate that back to the client and get that all back into QuickBooks.
And get it all back into QuickBooks. I think that, you know, you had me up until the very, very end. That's where it becomes this challenge. It's like, okay, and then it's tying it all together. Mm-hmm. Being able to have all the pieces to, you know, it's like we always say, if you don't have the details, well, then your reports are going to be missing details. You're not going to have everything there.
Truly. And one of the things that I like about the app stack that you probably have on your slide is that I use HubDoc and I have the receipts. So if I work with a firm, because I can partner with a firm that has, you know, people in the office that'll upload receipts for me, and I can put them in the client advanced cost category, and then it will actually sync right back up into that place in LeanLaw that it's ready to be billed to the client. So it's sitting waiting to be billed back. So it's a billable expense. And it's really seamless because you can pull it in, you just have to attach the matter to it. And then when you do the billing, it's there to be used to rebill back to the client. So it's easy. I mean, they make it easy.
It's easy. You know,
less clicks.
We have other hard things, as many things as possible that we can make easy. I'm all for, and there's no reason that we shouldn't utilize technology to make it easier.
And you know, one of the biggest things that I find so fascinating is when you take somebody from desktop and they're watching the process. You could use Receipt Bank, or you could use auto entry. I mean, there's lots of tools. You just select the one that you like.
Even the new receipt capture in QuickBooks Online.
QuickBooks too. And then you can, you know, and when the client that's come from that program and gets into QuickBooks Online Advanced and sees the receipt is attached to the transaction, it's like they think it's magic. They're like, how did that get there? And it's right there for them to see what it is. And you can click on it in LeanLaw and it'll take you right back to the QuickBooks transaction. So it's click and it's there. It's really great.
You know, Linda, okay, so do you have staff that work with you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one of the things that happened the other day is I was going back through my staff's work, and it made me think about what the client's perspective was, because I was able to see all of these attachments. We do a pretty good job of making sure that all of the attachments there, but we have one particular employee that is always, she is always, no matter what, she's going to add an attachment, whatever she can find, she's going to create a doc. She is a stickler for that. And I can tell you, every single time I look at her work, I always know that it's accurate. And I know that I can go look at the document that's attached and I can confirm that it's accurate.
That's perfect. And I think that's a huge value add, but that's how you can charge more money too, right?
Yep. I agree. The better that we are, the better the books are, the better the tools are. So Linda, I feel like we should have introduced you in the very beginning. Let me go ahead and pass this over to you. And I think my air conditioner in this hotel room is a little loud. So I'm going to go adjust it real quick.
Okay. Well, I'm an advanced ProAdvisor for both desktop and QuickBooks Online. 20 years, just this past June, working in my own business. Obviously had a few more years added to that on my working for people. One of the early adopters of QuickBooks Online. So I've been using it. The story I would like to say is I hired my daughter. She had a baby 4 years ago, and she was the reason why she started doing the work and only wanted to use online. And then all of a sudden I realized she was doing the work faster than I was. So that made me decide I was going to learn QuickBooks Online, get certified, get advanced certified, which I highly recommend. We got that date coming up July 31st. If you're a ProAdvisor out there, please take the recert before you have to take the full test. And yeah, I'm on the Intuit Advisory Council. Actually just became a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network. So I'm on that now too. And
congratulations.
Thank you. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, and it'll be fun. So that's a little bit about me. I have a firm, I've got people working for me and a lot of clients. I forgot how many now, full service, different levels, specializing in law and real estate.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm excited to see what all happens with the Trainer Writer Network.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
It's going to be fun.
I agree. So I'm just going to advance that for you. So it's like, why niche?
It's just that, set yourself apart from the competition, right? If you start to really put yourself out there, and it takes a lot of work, like you said, about a year it takes of all the back work, and stick to it, get that buddy. Like I have my buddy. And if I start to freak out and say, I'm going to give up, I'm not going to do it anymore, you call him on the phone and he'll just say, hey, stop it. So that's helpful. And then you can streamline your workflow. So your team knows exactly, like adding the attachments, that's part of the workflow. We have a whole system in place. There are a few videos on my blog that will show you how I work through with using HubDoc. I use Lisio for client communication and storing documents. LawPay, because LawPay is the one app for merchant services that actually will work if you're going to charge on a trust account, it has to have the separation. You cannot take money out of the amount of money received. If you're billing on a trust account, you can't take funds, they take the money off. You have to make sure that that's separate. That's the only app I know that does that. I believe there's probably other companies that do it, but that one, LawPay, is really specific to the law firms and it's compliant. Learning the lingo, which we already talked about, and also marketing yourself. So that's a big one, marketing yourself to the attorneys and really starting to work towards that. Takes a lot of time. You got to have to write a lot of blog posts, do a lot of videos. That's kind of what would be my tip to really get yourself out there. Any opportunity, if they call you from happy hour, you make sure you show up and go there for it. So yeah.
Well, it's funny that you say that the marketing piece. One of the things that I have found that happens is whenever you're working closely with these apps, they want to help you help them. And so it's this reciprocal relationship where both of you benefit by saying, I am the ProAdvisor that's recommended for this particular app. And so LeanLaw does a really nice job of highlighting their ProAdvisors.
They do. They love us. We should actually have a shirt that says, I love the ProAdvisors instead of I love lawyers that we had. But yeah, they do. They're just great to work with. I can't say enough about them. I mean, they're just wonderful people to work with.
Well, that's good.
Thank you.
It's good to be liked.
Yeah. And there's my legal stack. And, these are just like the apps that I use. And as you can see, LeanLaw is right up there. I use full service payroll. I don't do payroll anymore. I let that Intuit take care of my payroll, which they do a great job. And I don't have to worry about paying people's taxes and making sure there are tax returns like I used to do years ago. HubDoc, I mentioned for document, working with the documents, scanning them, putting them, attaching them to QuickBooks Online, obviously QuickBooks Online, LawPay and Lisio, which is, I use that actually for working with my team as well. So my team, that's how I give them tasks, and I love Lisio. And this is, again, another app that just, the people are wonderful behind it. So.
You know, and I like what you're showing here is that you don't just use one app, you have to have several different apps. And once you create that workflow, that's whenever it starts to get easier and easier. And then, you know, this is my system. Exactly. And so there's some people out there that they're like, this is the system. We don't deviate from that. And, you know, that's sometimes hard for me to accept because I like learning it all.
Yes, yes.
So I want to touch it all. I see Heather smiling.
Well, you know, sometimes I swap out HubDoc. We swap out HubDoc if the law firm's bigger and we need users in and they don't have the user permissions. So we'll use Receipt Bank. So, or we'll use auto entry. So there's reasons behind everyone that we use, and we really love them all, but that sometimes can get swapped out. A lot of times some of the law firms don't have to work with the trust accounts and the IOLTA accounts, so they don't need LawPay, but maybe they'll use QuickBooks Online for their merchant service. So you just kind of build it out, but it's pretty specific. Because my team knows this, so this is what I want to stay with.
Yes, yep. Training your team is time consuming, and once they understand these are the apps that you use, it's easier to be able to pass work to them.
Exactly. And yeah, and here, I just wanted to show that the custom fields. So this is the new, I mean, I'm just really starting to get into QuickBooks Online Advanced, but I'm loving it. I'm loving the fact that I can take the program and put these custom fields, which then will show up on the invoices or show up wherever I want to put them. And it keeps the older partner happy, the younger partner's happy because now he's in the cloud, and it's a win-win. So it's really, that's been my big feature with QuickBooks Online Advanced, that and the user permissions. I love having the roles and being able to do specific roles for the staff. And then of course, Fathom. You can get into, you know, I started working with a law firm that they wanted to know how much each attorney they had a goal set and how were they doing with keeping their goals. And you can get into some of that with them and start to really get fine-tuned into with Fathom, you can get into KPIs, comparing law firms from nearby, or you can get into a lot of different KPIs. It's funny, it's hard to pick the right KPI. So it's a little bit of a challenge. You have to figure out what works, because you can be like a kid in a candy store as an accountant when you start looking at all the different KPIs, like, oh, there's a shiny object, there's a shiny object. So you have to kind of figure out what works the best for the law firms. But once you've got that figured out, you can really use the power of Fathom with the law firms to give your attorneys information and data that you would not get in Plus, you would not get in Essentials. This is a big piece, unless you add Fathom to it. This is a big piece, and we normally go to QuickBooks Advanced because of the chart of accounts. That's
big, yeah, truth to that one. Okay, So I also want to introduce LeanLaw, who's here. And so we've got Gary Allen, and then we've got Jonathan Fisherman. So do you want to go ahead and take a minute to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, thank you, Liz. I'll take just a couple minutes here, Jonathan. I'm Gary Allen. I was the original founder of LeanLaw. I'm a practicing attorney. I've been practicing about 30 years, and LeanLaw originally grew out of the pain that I felt with the tools law firms had to use, not just timekeeping and billing, but everything. And you know, the mission has at the same time kind of narrowed down into the financial aspects of a law firm, but also has risen into thinking, wow, we've got issues like law firms have the same issues that professional services firms have across the board. So we could be looking at broader applications at some point. But you know, I was really fortunate to meet Jonathan about 5 years ago, and he's become a formidable expert in small law firms, as has Fred Willerup, our CTO, and our other staff. So I'm really excited to see this development. I mean, we're really at the front end of a big wave of law firms that, you know, maybe 5 or 10% of law firms have switched to online apps. there's a big opportunity here to transition hundreds of thousands of firms around the country. And we're really excited to be here at sort of the front end of the QuickBooks Online wave for law firms and professional services. So very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Liz. And Heather.
Yeah. So I'm Jonathan Fishman, and as Gary mentioned, I'm one of the other founders of the company. My role in the company is really the life cycle of the customer. So I get the customer when they come in through our lead gen tools and carry that all the way through retention. We're still a small company, so I'm actively every day talking to our customers. And as I mentioned earlier, our customers are both the ProAdvisor community and legal community. And so every day I'm working with these two different cohorts, and many times bridging the gap. I mean, I have a long tenured in early stage technology companies and have worked with small businesses since the mid 90s. So I understand the dynamics of a small business really, really well. And sometimes I'm translating, sometimes I'm coaching, sometimes I'm disciplining in the process. And what's interesting is when it really works, you've created a relationship with these people, and you can do that fairly quickly. But once that relationship's established, you really have a powerful platform to make change in a law firm. And that's what really gets me most excited, is when I look at in some of the relationships that Linda's spoken to, those firms of where they were and where they're almost to. I wouldn't say they're there yet. That's exciting because you've really introduced not just a tool, but you've introduced a new workflow. And from the workflow, you get good data. And I'm going to speak to this Dan, and you get insights. So that's what really gets LeanLaw excited, is that, yeah, workflow is important, but really at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is help law firms operate better and transform themselves through this data process. So that's who we are.
It's interesting, Gary, that you were talking about that you're at the forefront of this merge of lawyers going to QuickBooks. It's funny because one of the things that made me think of was I've had law firm clients before that had said, oh, well, QuickBooks is over there. I've got all of my data over here, and I just look at it here. And so the two systems didn't talk at all to each other, which is one of the reasons why when Heather and I got to see the LeanLaw demo, both of us were so wowed. So I can't wait for everybody else who's here to also be wowed. But the thing that happened is, I think that for years, lawyers have been talking to their lawyer buddies, and they've said, oh, well, this is the way that I do my law firm books for my clients, and then keep everything straight. And then over here, I don't know what my accountant does. I don't know about the bookkeeping. And so I think that for years, it's been two different pieces. And so I think that you are 100% correct, that now we have a way to be able to bring both of them together. And I call it the water cooler talk, or I think about my grandpa used to go to the gas station every single morning, and he would talk with his buddies, and they would talk shop about, their businesses before they would go in and get their day started. And that's where they would swap information. And so these lawyers are going to be swapping information about, okay, they just give little nuggets about this. Okay, this is the thing that we're doing, and this is how it's working. And so I think that it's going to change, that instead of each other mentoring, that this is the stuff that we use and it just doesn't go into QuickBooks. So who knows what they do over there? I think that's changing.
No, that's a really good point, Liz. And yeah, I mean, how can you have great insights on your business when you have two sets of books?
Yeah, two sets of books.
The one thing every ProAdvisor should know about lawyers is lawyers like to put their noses down and bill hours. And so they don't spend a lot of time thinking about their business. But if somebody who, understands their business helps them to start thinking about that, there's a massive opportunity to increase the productivity of these firms. It's a great opportunity. Not easy customers to get, but really good customers to have.
Yeah, I agree. Not easy customers to get, but it's like Linda was talking about in the beginning. It's like they trickle in. Once they start talking, water cooler talk with each other, they start showing up.
Well, they'll listen. The truth is, they're feeling pain right now. I mean, you're seeing a lot of pain in terms of old systems, and you're seeing a generational change where boomers are aging out and the new general managers are Gen X's. I'm a Gen X. And Gen X is maybe not, certainly aren't digital native, but are in tune with the idea of modernization and cloud, and they're more comfortable with it. So there's this natural tension inside the firm as the older folks are letting go, the newer folks are coming in. They're also seeing the idea that a server architecture doesn't make sense, which means desktop doesn't make sense. So there's this, hey, we got to go to the cloud. So you kind of have this perfect storm of transformation happening, both in the sort of psychology of the firm and then also in the mechanics of the firm. And it creates an enormous opportunity for ProAdvisor, because they basically, I said this to Sarah today in an email, they want the solution. They're not patient for the process. So so it's our job to help facilitate the process in such a way that they can receive it. And that's really critical, is how that they can receive it. Because they're like, just do it. Because they all work on instinct and gut. You know, like with cash flow to them is all like, yeah, I kind of know how many hours I built. Right. So they're good from a financial standpoint.
There's an interesting stat too. I was just reading the ABA journal, and there was an interesting stat in there that was talking about the average age of an attorney and how there's actually going to be, like you said, this wave that's going to just change over. So as these older partners start to retire, and the younger ones come in, they want to be on their phone. They want to be on their iPad. They don't want to be stuck to a desktop program. So this is, like you said, this is the opportunity to grab it, go for it, learn the industry, get yourself out there and learn LeanLaw.
Yep, I agree with that. So in light of that, go LeanLaw. Like one of my favorite parts. And so we have a toast that we want to do for LeanLaw. And I love this name. So the Lean Green Machine is all thanks to LeanLaw's very own Elizabeth.
Oh, Elizabeth's awesome.
I love it. I love it. So I've got mine right here.
I have one.
Here.
All right. So
I have water.
Make it all times easier.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
Ah.
Well, you know, it's always fun because we come up with these back and forth names and what should the image look like. And so when Elizabeth said Lean Green Machine, I was like, yes.
Perfect.
That's right, because you're scaling down all of the systems, getting it clean, and it is a machine because it's working and it's turning. I was just like, oh, and the color green goes with LeanLaw. Couldn't be more perfect. So, well done.
Take it on the road.
That's right. Take it on the road. So I don't know if you want to start with a demo here, or if you want me to push the slides here. What would you like?
I'll take I've got my deck queued up, so I'll just take the slides from here.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to allow you to you can start sharing if you want to.
All right. Let me know if everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we do.
Okay. I put together a very quick 2 or 3 slides just so that we could give a little context before we get into LeanLaw. And I want to get to the present mode. So LeanLaw, as we've talked about, is a software as a solution. We're web-based, and our whole focus is to help facilitate the workflow of the invoicing and revenue side of a law firm. So we'll talk about a few things today about introducing LeanLaw and talk about some core needs and some next steps in our firm. So we already met Gary and I. And as a company, a few things to think about. We came to market with the idea that our first sort of truism was that QuickBooks was the source of truth. We believed that QuickBooks was a viable accounting package, but we knew it had really critical gaps, some gaps that law firms needed. So we built LeanLaw not as a tool that at some point during the law would sync over to QuickBooks, but as an extension, a companion of what QuickBooks was, such that when we do our job right, the lawyers can work in a program that is completely native to them, that makes that's intuitive, that's in the rhythm of their day. But the accounting community, you folks, can work in a tool that's native to you, QuickBooks Online. And so I'll show some very specific examples of that. A few things relative to this. I really want this group to hear it. Attorneys find it difficult to find accounting resources that understand how law firms operate. I get probably 1 to 2 questions a week saying, do you know a law firm? And some don't think to even ask me, or do you know an accounting firm? And some don't even know to ask me. I had 2 last week. And it's such an enormous opportunity for your community to build the skills and brand to go service these law firms because they're ripe to be sought after as clients. Real quick, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with moving this forward. A little bit about the law market so everyone understands it. There's roughly 1.3 million attorneys. 68% work in small law firms. Small law firms are like 50 attorneys or less. Gary can correct me, but maybe it's up to 200, but we're not talking big law. So small dominates the entire marketplace. And they're really broken up into these 5 categories. And this is sort of our breakup. Solo is a single person. Solo plus is a single with some staff. Micro is 2 to 4 attorneys and partners. A lead principal tends to have 1 strong lead and then a bunch of folks that work for that lead person. And the small law firm is 5 plus. The reason we break this out is because they're really different in nature. A solo is an independent person. She's working for herself. Solo plus now gets some HR and payroll. Micro is sort of an eat what you kill, meaning, you know, the compensation models are all about, hey, we have a certain much of fixed costs and the rest I get what I earn. But when you start getting into small law firms, you get into far more complex compensation models, utilization. They're more savvy when it comes to data.
Just one clarification there, Jonathan, which is that was the US market for 1.3 million.
Yeah, thank you. So a little bit about law tools. Really important to understand how they sort of fit in the roadmap. There's practice management tools that are very popular, and Clio being the biggest name brand there. And they encompass many facets of managing a law practice. Docketing, which is court rules and calendaring management, tasks, document management, email management. And then there are invoicing only tools. This is where LeanLaw fits in. And what I want to pay attention to in this invoicing only are some of these 3 down here, Sage, Tabs 3, and PC Law. This is where we're seeing a tremendous amount of activity as these older tools are being aged out. People are moving to QuickBooks Online, and LeanLaw becomes a nice fit to that. In the practice management side, many of these tools have invoicing and some AR accounting inside of them. That creates the inherent problem, is that now you have a hybrid GL because you've got the AR sitting in the practice management tool and you're trying to bring it over to QuickBooks. The best sync tool is Clio for sure. But as many, you go out and talk to the accounting pro community, you'll hear a lot of frustrations around that. Others don't even sync or sync in a very old fashioned way where we have 2 data sets. So something to keep in mind that not everyone wants an invoicing only tool. Some of them really do want a practice management tool. And it's important to know both. Just one last point. As you think about this urge to focus and niche, and become a trusted advisor, it all starts with workflow. Workflow creates quality data. And with quality data, you get insights, and only there can you get into efficiency and profitability. And it really moves the pro advisor community from being the functional value of bookkeeping into the more consultative value and trusted advisor value as you move up the food chain. But if you can't get good workflow, everything upstream from that fails because bad data in is bad data out. Okay, let's show LeanLaw if I can get out of this. When I show the demo today, I want to focus on, I'm going to do an abbreviated version of our demo, and I'm going to kind of talk about a highlight. And I'm going to highlight 2 areas that people really have a lot of pain in dealing with law firms. One is expense management, and one is trust accounting. I don't want to dismiss the idea that we're great at timekeeping. It's interesting. We're really feature complete from a timekeeping standpoint. We get the least amount of questions from our support team and feature requests for time tracking. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I'm just going to overview that, but I really want to show you trust tracking. LeanLaw's job is to collect the time entries, any fixed fee elements, and of course the expenses, and draft those into what we call a pre-bill. So we then take that pre-bill and we pass that off to QuickBooks for delivery to the client. So in a day in the life of LeanLaw for a law firm is they're tracking time, they're tracking expenses, they might be looking at reports. We connect to QuickBooks via the API, their QuickBooks API, so all of our interactions with QuickBooks is real time. We don't create a file and then try to sync it over at some time later. We do everything in real time. So I'm going to start by just giving you a high-level overview of the product. So calendaring is just a visual representation of your day. It's meant for those timekeepers that want to look at their day and say, where are the gaps? So you can see, you know, I didn't bill any time between 12 and 1. If I look back at a different day, geez, I didn't bill any time on before 9. And I can look at this in single-day view, or I can push and look at this in multi-day view. And what this is really about is that not every timekeeper wants to have a list. Some of them want visual. Now we do have timers on this page, so I can enter time by just clicking on a time entry and get my time entry field, or I can engage a timer, and that facilitates the timer. Time entries is more of the conventional list view. So that's the idea of folks that want to just, you know, click and shoot. They click their time entries and look at them. This is also where we can print and export our time, and we can also review our time. You'll see that in all LeanLaw pages, you'll have different filters for how do I want to look at my time, by a certain period, by a certain timekeeper, maybe by a certain client matter. And we can always sort and list, and it's very easy to review our time by clicking things here. And this is also a very effective bulk entry tool. The expenses tabs are where we entering those reimbursable costs. Now, a lot of lawyers will tell you, you know, they just sort of wash off their expenses. But the truth is, they're not tracking, because every expense, every lawyer wants to get those expense reimbursed. They don't want to just have it as a cost. 2 ways to enter expenses in LeanLaw. And what you'll notice, the first way is just entering the expense in LeanLaw by adding it. You get the standard add an expense, client Morris. I'm going to do this one. Terry Morris, and I've got this set up as copying charge for $25, and that expense is ready to go. I have LeanLaw set up that those expenses entered in LeanLaw are soft costs. Those that are entered, I'm going to show you in a second, entered in QuickBooks are hard costs. And I know the QuickBooks ones because they have these green dots. So if I head over to QuickBooks and thinking about that expense, and you're thinking about that receipt bank workflow, or you're thinking about that accounting person inside the firm that got a physical bill and they need to add it, and they can just go into QuickBooks, add an expense. I pick, you know, oh, I'm just going to do, you know, a Joe, the expert witness fee. And what LeanLaw's looking at here is this category or account. And I can add details here. I'm going to pick my client. Let's see if this client's in. Terry Morris, that's the one I was working with. Add an amount, and we'll say it's $325, and save and close. So that's the workflow day to day. Someone gets a bill, someone's looking at a bank feed. What that happens though in LeanLaw is that as soon as I refresh, that expense is already populated to LeanLaw. So you can see there's the $325 that we did right there. And that's queued up and ready to go. So I didn't have to do any sync work. I didn't have to say anything. It's right there for expenses. And we built this specifically for, based on feedback from our ProAdvisors, because they're saying, hey, this is a really big pain point. We're missing a lot of expenses coming out of QuickBooks because we're having to do this dual entry. So we fixed that there. Moving into billing, this is where we actually produce invoices in LeanLaw. And you'll see that there's a workflow here set up. And what's really important to law firms is this idea of invoice review. Some people call it a pre-bill or a draft bill, but it's a really critical step. Because this is all online, we're seeing a lot of our ProAdvisors outsource invoicing, meaning they're taking that as a product that they sell into law firms because they're going to do the pre-bill all the way through AR. And because LeanLaw has an electronic approval, they essentially the lawyer can edit her invoices directly. So I want to, as we move forward, we're also seeing open invoices and paid invoices. What's really important here is that we're trying to make it so that the law firm can actually see the status of an invoice. You know, I've got this invoice here for Hessington Oil that was originally $10,000. We can see it's now $5,200. These are non-paid invoices that appear. And if I open up one of these invoices, you know, I could get to it by this bookmark view in QuickBooks. Another pain point. How do we get that person to get to QuickBooks without slobbering around and trying to figure out where they need to go? And then you get a call saying, I can't find the invoice. Can you please send it to me?
Okay, wait. I love that. So, okay, I'm going to point out a couple of things because that is just like, it wows me how easy it is to move back and forth between LeanLaw and QuickBooks. So it doesn't matter who you are, if you're the attorney or on the attorney team, or if you're the accountant, you can see both sides of all of the details for the client, all of the expenses, everything that is grouped with that matter. And then on the QuickBooks side, you can then launch QuickBooks and you can see all the details, or you can work in QuickBooks and then go backwards. So wow. I love that. And I love that you said slobbering.
Yeah.
One of Heather's favorite words the other day.
So that's an invoicing workflow, and I don't want to run out of time, so I'm going to kind of push ahead a little bit. But the idea of really critical piece, which is trust accounting. So when we look at LeanLaw, again, think lawyer view, accounting view, lawyer view, accounting view. From the lawyer, they just want to know what the heck the specific ledger balance is for one client. They want to know what the cash balance is and what the liability balance is, right? They want to know some very key data. What that looks like on the QuickBooks side, and what LeanLaw is really doing here, if I just jump to the chart of accounts, is that when we see this 133, LeanLaw is reading that number in real time from the chart of accounts. It's not as if we hold the number and say, hey, what's the new number? If LeanLaw calls out and said, what's the new number? Specifically, if we look at Jackie's here, I don't know why she has a typo in it, but again, this lawyer in their day part says, how much trust money do I have? What are the transactions? And when I look at these transactions, these are the specific transactions that are in QuickBooks. Where that translates to is, and this is, this always brings up a very active dialogue, is that in the liability account. So we have our asset side here, 133, and then every lawyer has to then have the liability side. And what's absolutely critical from a compliance standpoint is that you can track the money in and the money out based on the client and or matter. That's just fundamentally critical for trust compliance. So LeanLaw took the approach to use subledgers. We get that this pushes up against ProAdvisors, but we think it's more important to know where the money is at any time and allow that lawyer to come in and see those transactions. That's a critical piece for us. So when we see these, I don't know, 6, 7 transactions, lawyer view, let's close that. If I come into Jackie, accounting view, same exact transactions. If I were to disperse 8341 from QuickBooks right here, LeanLaw would be immediately updated. So the idea is that whether I use LeanLaw as a tool to facilitate a trust deposit or a payment of an invoice, or whether it's a contingency matter and we're moving money directly out of the trust fund, LeanLaw stays in sync the entire time. Why the other huge advantage of the way that we do it is that when you go to reconcile, so every month you need to do a 3-way reconciliation, bank statement to bank QuickBooks account, or bank statement to QuickBooks account. But then the third piece is to be able to go in and see all of the ledger activity, money in, money out by client. And this makes it very easy for folks to quickly make sure that they're in sync from the trust standpoint. So that's trust accounting. And there's a workflow associated with it, the idea that we can deposit to trust. This is just LeanLaw facilitating that trust deposit. And we're making sure we're saying who's giving you the money and how, what the use of the money is. And that gets stamped into the memo field. So it's there for the historical record. So if you untether LeanLaw at some point, you still have all of that information inside of QuickBooks. I'm going to jump ahead into reports because we're running out of time and they're important. So this is a report we're really proud of. And we're proud of it because this is the way we think. LeanLaw is part of QuickBooks and QuickBooks is part of LeanLaw. And so when we look at our WIP report, our work in progress, I have plenty of filters to look at what we're doing. But we're showing what the WIP is at any given month, but we're also showing real-time receivable balance, last payment, and trust balance. So you can come into this tool at any given time and have a complete snapshot of your firm. And this data is being generated live from QuickBooks. So if you make a payment, go back to this report, it will be updated immediately. The other critical report is this revenue by attorney report. And so what this revenue by attorney report, let me give a little bit more time. We have all sorts of filters that we can look at it, but it shows us what was billed, what was collected, what the share is. We're doing real-time origination. So when you receive a payment into LeanLaw, we'll automatically update that back into this revenue by attorney report, such that we're tying in the QuickBooks piece and allocating specifically dollar amounts based on how much that attorney contributed to a particular matter. And if David wants to go see how that information breaks down, he just clicks this button and he can see the detail of all of that money. So not only what did David make from the hours that he billed, but what origination did he make? And then of course his adjusted share, which is, you know, his origination that he did or what he gave up for origination. So that is LeanLaw. I think we're at the hour, right, Liz?
We are. And you know, I love that you finish with reports, because that's where we end up finishing our books. And so that's how you close it out, is you're able to see all of your hard work. What are those results? And so some of the really nice reports that you have built in that really catch my eye is that revenue by attorney. That's a huge one. Revenue by client and matter. Those are huge pieces that level of reporting is hard to get inside of QuickBooks. I'm not saying that you can't, it's just there's some things that are missing inside of QuickBooks to be able to gather all of these details. And we know that our attorneys like using an attorney-based software. So to me, LeanLaw is a huge win. And I'm certainly happy that you've been on the Appy Hour, because it's opened up a world of possibilities for so many of us ProAdvisors.
Yeah, well, we're really appreciative. And you know, I said this early on, and I'll say it again over and over. We are so grateful and so appreciative of the ProAdvisor community and how they've supported us. And we welcome any and all feedback to our product. It's all very helpful to us as we develop, because if it doesn't work for you guys, it's not going to work. And that's just the bottom line. So we really see that loud and clear.
And, you know, we feel the same way about our clients. If our clients are frustrated with the technology, they just stop using it. And so the simpler that it is, the better use that our clients initiate. And so it's definitely teamwork.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention, I didn't get the chance to get to this page, but we of course can support a single client, single matter, or a single client, multiple matters. We can bill at the client level. We can bill at the matter level, which translates into customer and sub-customer billing. So what you'll see is that we have lots of hooks deep into QuickBooks. And, you know, the slobbering world really is, we don't slobber all over the chart of accounts. There are some legal tools that will just leave a mess on the chart of accounts, and we do not do that. So when you dig in and get in to be a ProAdvisor, a LeanLaw Accounting Pro, you'll get your own version of LeanLaw. There's never a cost to the LeanLaw Accounting Pro community to use LeanLaw for themselves, a la cheat sheets, or there's never financial friction for you to access your legal client's LeanLaw account. So there's no financial friction to interact with LeanLaw.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to put up the poll real quick to see if people would like to be reached. Actually, this says house call Pro, and now just go ahead and ignore that's actually LeanLaw. The for whatever reason that didn't get updated right there. But if you would like to be reached by LeanLaw, let me just say it out loud. Please go ahead and say yes, and then we will pass over your information so that way LeanLaw can reach out to you.
And we do house calls, Liz. So.
Right? It's one of those, it's like, oh.
Do you do house calls, Gary? I don't do house calls.
I'm sensing that Elizabeth's going to be all over this. It'll be the next blog post out of LeanLaw. Be no slobbering on the chart of accounts. Next week's blog.
It's a good headline, right?
Yeah, it really is.
Someone in the group asked the price. The price is, if you pay annually, it's $336, which equates to $28 per user. And if you pay month to month, it's $35 per user. If you become a LeanLaw Accounting Pro and you deploy it, what happens is that you get to give your clients a 10% discount. When we were setting up the Accounting Pro program, we found that that was what folks wanted to do.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Give the
Well,
discount.
so I'm watching both places, Facebook and on Zoom. And so you got a lot of love over in Facebook.
Yay.
You know, one of the things that people
Awesome.
do is they kind of heart stuff. And so we had a lot of hearts that were flying over there, which means that I think people are saying they needed a solution for these attorneys. So I'm appreciative of you being on here. And I want to go ahead and just say to the audience, thank you for joining us today. I know it's summertime, so thank you for coming. If you have to ever jump out early, you know that you can go over to our recordings and you can see all of our past episodes. This one will be saved over into the tavern, is what we call them. So it's where you can come and stay and hang out a while and watch all the different past episodes. And then also, we just want to say a big, thank you to having LeanLaw on today. And so I want to be able to say thank you. So thank you for coming on today, LeanLaw, and sharing with us a solution for these attorneys. And I also want to say thank you to ADP as our brewery level sponsorship.
Awesome. Thanks
Nice.
for having us, Liz and Heather. We really had a great time.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can't wait to share a lean green machine with you at QuickBooks.
I know, me too. Cheers in person. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye-bye.